This is the Tech Phantom, and welcome to episode 18 of this walkthrough. And in this episode, we are finally going to go into the downloadable content. So it has taken us a long time, but because we were following on the lore, we took a meandering path, and it took us a long time to be able to go into the downloadable content. Alright, a couple of things that I wanted to just briefly clear up from the last video where I covered Seath, and a viewer brought this to my attention in a very smart comment. Xanthus King Jeremiah is a very powerful pyromancer, and he is most likely the king of the other pyromancers that are trapped in the painted world of Ariamis. And it is possible that the king, when he went into exile, he brought his pyromancers with him, and he has a notch whip. And if you look at the notch whip description, it'll tell you that it is very effective against flesh, and it will cause bleeding, and it will cause a lot of pain. So that goes hand in hand with the whole theme of the painted world of Ariamis, which is all about Velka, and it's all about punishing the sinners, and it's essentially purgatory. Alright, so I wanted to point that out because that was a very astute comment made by a viewer. Alright, so we are finally heading into the downloadable content, as I told you guys earlier. And just to recap, in order to do the downloadable content, we needed to talk to Dusk, and after killing the Hydra, we needed to answer yes to her dialogue when she asks us if she could sell us miracles. Then we also need to summon her. Then we need to obtain the Lord Vessel, so we need to kill Smoy Nordenstein, and we need to place the Lord Vessel in the Firelink Shrine, and then that will open the path forward. Then we proceed on to the Duke's Archives, where we fight a blue golem at the beginning of the level, and he will drop the broken pendant. And we bring the broken pendant back to Dusk, which is what we're doing right now, and we will finally be able to access the downloadable content. So like everything in Dark Souls, the developers didn't make accessing the new content straightforward by any means at all. So I guess that goes hand in hand with the game, with the lore of the game, that nothing is straightforward, nothing is spoon-fed to you. You kind of have to figure everything out by yourself. Alright, so we've come back to this area, and we pick up Dusk's dress and also her crown. And her crown is very, very powerful. It will increase both sorceries and pyromancers by about 20%. And apparently this was given to her upon her birth. And we also can take a look at her dress, the antiquated dress, and it's just an ivory color silk dress, and it says don't expect any magical protection from it, and that is absolutely true. Now, the skirt used to be very, very powerful in the first version of the game, but it was severely nerfed after that. If you guys remember too, Dusk also possessed the Dusk Crown Ring, which is another very powerful item. It allows you to cast twice as many sorceries at the expense of your vitality. Alright, so next to the armor, next to her dress, we see this gate or this portal. And out of this portal comes a hand, a giant hand, that is going to drag us into the new world, and we are going to try to figure out what this new world is, what the hand was, why we were dragged back, and apparently we are sent into Sanctuary Garden. Now we notice that we can warp from this bonfire, and you are able to warp in and warp out. So this is a standard bonfire. So this world is somewhere in touch with Lordran, and it's not cut off from it because you can freely warp in and out of the bonfire. Alright, so we are heading into our first boss fight, and this is the boss fight of the Sanctuary Guardian. And as far as the mechanics, you just need to wait for your opening. He has a lot of endurance, and he has quite a strong punching attack. So you just need to bide your time. Well, the best time to attack him or to heal is when he pushes off with his wings, and he sort of pushes a bunch of air in front of you. And if you dodge to the side of that, you will be able to run around him, and you'll be able to attack him. If you get hit by the rush of wind, which is right there, it could completely drop your endurance, and it could even stun you altogether. Alright, so we defeated the Sanctuary Guardian pretty easily, and he dropped the Guardian Soul. If you cut his tail, he will also drop a weapon that it's actually a whip that can be used to poison people. But if you take a look at the Guardian Soul description, it tells us that this demon was a white-winged lion, and he was the watcher of the sanctuary who dreaded the spread of the abyss. So this is our first clue right here that whatever world we're in, the abyss is advancing on it, or it's spreading in it, and apparently the Sanctuary Guardian, for whatever reason, he's kind of a noble creature. He's trying to protect the folks from coming into this area because they are going to be accosted. They're going to be exposed by the abyss, which is spreading. So that guardian, that lion, I guess he was a combination of different kinds of animals. He is preventing people from coming into Oolacile Sanctuary, which is why we had to kill him. Alright, so apparently this is it's a magical place because we see a talking mushroom. And she tells us that we smell funny, but not intolerably nasty. And she also says, we recognize you. You are Princess Dusk's savior. So apparently Dusk has told this mushroom that we saved her. We were able to get her free from the golem from the plane of distortion that she was trapped in. But apparently Dusk has gotten herself into trouble again. She's been kidnapped by the horrifying primeval human. So that is probably the most important line of lore in the entire DLC. That whoever it was that kidnapped Dusk is a primeval human. So we will try to puzzle out over the next couple of videos as we go through the downloadable content who the primeval human is if he is tied to the abyss, and why he would kidnap Dusk, and maybe he's the one that brought us here. And if he did, then we are going to try to find out why it was that we were brought here. Alright, so Elizabeth is a fountain of information. She is also going to tell us that Artorias came into the abyss to try to save Princess Dusk, but that he may have fallen or he may have been tainted by the dark, and that she is glad that we are going to take up the fight to try to save Dusk from the dark, from the abyss. So that's kind of strange. Artorias is here. So if Artorias is here, and big spoiler, guys, but by now this shouldn't be that big of a spoiler. Since Artorias is here, this means that we have been magically teleported to the past. So the downloadable content is a prequel, but obviously there are going to be inconsistencies related to the fact that we are from the future, yet we are going to be interacting with the past, and we are going to be changing the outcomes of future events. So there are going to be some mind-blowing events coming up. So let's talk about Artorias a little bit. And we know from the walkthrough so far that Artorias is thought of as a great, great hero, and he was one of the 4 knights of Lord Wynn. The 4 knights were Ornstein, who was the captain of the guard, the captain of the knights. Karen, or Charon, I'm going to call her Karen. She was one of the Lord's Blades. She was one of the female assassins that worked for Wynn. Of course, Guff, who was a giant and who was an incredibly powerful and accurate archer who could take down lions with one shot. And finally, the most famous of all was Artorias. And he was famous because he had gone into the abyss. He was famous for having gone into the abyss. Now, one thing that's important to note is that Artorias went into the abyss twice. The first time he went into the abyss, he was supposed to try to bring down the 4 kings. And the second time that he went into the abyss is now, in the past, when he tried to save Dusk of Oolacile. So what happened the first time that the Knight Artorias went into the abyss to help the sealers, the keepers of the seal, to help folks like Ingward keep the 4 kings and their dark raids locked away? Well, we know that Artorias joined in a covenant with the 4 kings. And the reason we know this is because he was given the Ring of the Covenant of Artorias, which we obtained from Sif, and which was the way that we were able to go into the abyss and finally put an end to the dark raids, or at least put an end to the 4 kings. So we also know that the Covenant of the Dark Raids, which is headed by Kath, the one of the primordial serpents, we know that Kath tempted the 4 kings with the power of Life Hunt, the power of Life Drain, and that he also tempted the Dark Raids with this power, and he eventually won them over, and he was his whole goal was to use the Dark Raids to collect humanity. So how was it that Artorias was able to survive the abyss? Why was it that the 4 kings came into a covenant with him? Well, the only explanation that we have, based on the mechanics of the game, is that Artorias is a Dark Wraith. Because he has the ring, he is able to travel through the abyss just like Dark Wraiths are. And because he came in and out of the abyss. And the only people that could travel through the abyss and had survived were the Dark Wraiths. We know that Beatrice, from the description of her items, Beatrice also attempted to go into the abyss, and perhaps she tried to use her homegrown magic to keep herself safe, but she was unable to do so. And she did not survive the abyss, and we found the spot where she had died after trying to reach the abyss. So, also from talking to Elvina, and from the Forest Hunters Covenant, we have a hint that Artorias may not be as heroic as he is cracked up to be. That he may not be as noble and as great as he is described. So we will have an opportunity to sort of explore that as we go through. Alright, so we have unlocked the shortcut of this area, and we have just showed you the fog door where you can fight with the boss. And here we find, before that, we find a new merchant. This is a new character, and his name is Marvelous Chester. And he is a very, very interesting chap. You know, he's a merchant. He sells some not too useful items, but he does sell some items should you need them. He's also a little bit of an eccentric, because he carries a candelabra with him. So apparently he likes the light, and he likes those candles, and he carries them with him wherever he goes. So that's a little bit of an eccentric thing to do. He also asks us if we've run into the legendary Abyss Walker Artorias. So apparently Chester has either seen Artorias or has fought Artorias, and he has also had conversations with Elizabeth, the talking mushroom, who was sort of the godmother of Dusk of Oolacile. And I'm thinking that that Elizabeth was maybe the not the mother, but the person that was assigned to be a teacher and to help Dusk grow up. So maybe she, you know, she was her, what is the word I'm looking for? Sort of like her babysitter, her teacher, and they developed a fond relationship over time. So we are going to be crossing paths with Chester a couple of times during the downloadable content, and we'll be talking a little bit more about him. He is a little bit more of an enigmatic character. Again, he's a little bit eccentric, but we will have an opportunity to figure out where he's coming from. Apparently, he was also snatched by the hand, and he does confirm to us that yes, we have time travel, because at the beginning of the dialogue with him, you saw that he asked us if we had been taken through time. Are we travelers just like he is? Alright, so the word I was trying to remember was headmistress, guys. So I think that Elizabeth was the headmistress for Dusk, and she was put in charge of her upbringing and her study. Alright, so we going through the fog door, and based on the conversation we had with Chester, we are expecting to meet Artorias, the legendary Abyss Walker, and indeed that is who we find, and he has taken out some kind of an enemy with a giant or with a bloated head that looks to have mutated, and it looks like this head has many eyes. And we notice that there's something wrong with Artorias. First of all, his armor and his sword, although they look very cool, they appear to be corroded. The other thing we notice is that his left arm is sort of hanging limp next to his body, and it's kind of useless. And indeed, during the fight, we notice that first of all, he doesn't have a shield, and that he's only fighting us with his right arm. That apparently he has broken his left arm, and it is completely useless. But let me tell you what, guys, he really doesn't need it. This is a very tough fight, and he packs a wallop, and he can use the power of the Abyss, the power of dark, because it's obvious that he's been tainted by the Abyss, to actually buff himself. And you need to be careful of that. If you have a heavy weapon, you can hit him while he is trying to buff himself, and you can break him out of that buff. But if you don't have a heavy weapon, and this is where he's going to buff right now, and I don't have a heavy enough weapon that I cannot break his guard while he's buffing, so I've allowed him to buff. So now, with the power of the Abyss, he can do a lot more damage, and I have to be very careful because he has a double swing attack that could kill me, because I don't have super high vitality, and I'm using the fast roll, so I'm using light armor, which is not as protective as heavy armor. But I think for this fight, I'd rather be mobile than have the additional defense of heavy armor. Alright, so in the next few minutes we are going to discuss the two possibilities for Artorias, and those possibilities are whether he is a quote-unquote good character or whether he is a quote-unquote evil character. And we know that Artorias is a dark wraith, and as you can see here, he is just killing me. So we will see you guys in a little bit with try number 2 at Artorias. Alright, so this actually turned out to be try number 3 as opposed to try number 2. I was unable to get Artorias in my last attempt, so hopefully third time's a charm and I am able to get him. And I have a powerful enough weapon that as long as I can avoid getting hit by his double attack, by his double sword swing, because that will one hit kill me. As long as I can avoid getting hit with that, I should be okay. And then the other thing you saw there, that I tried to break him out of his buff move, but I just didn't have a weapon that is heavy enough and can stun him, so I wasn't able to do it. But if you have a heavy weapon, a heavier sword or an axe or something like that, you should be able to do it. And he will be a little bit easier to deal with because he will not do as much damage since he will not be in buff form, which he is here. Alright, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that we don't know at this point if Artorias is quote-unquote a good character or if he is a bad character. The only thing that we know at this point is that he has joined the Dark Wraith's Covenant, and that's because he has a ring for that covenant, and he also is able, or was able to at one point, come out of the abyss, and he was proclaimed a great hero because he was the only one that was able to do that. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, because this fight right here is almost over. I just need to hit him one more time, and there it is. Long live Knight Artorias. Alright, so let's talk a little bit more about Artorias, and instead of talking about whether he was a good or an evil character, let's use Dark Souls terminology and let's talk about him being a character of light versus a character of dark. Because in Dark Souls, light is associated with sunlight and with Lord Wind and with divinity, with the gods, while darkness is associated with the abyss and is associated with everything that is in opposition or that is opposite of the gods, of divinity. So Artorias was a being of light, and as a matter of fact, Elizabeth, the mushroom, the talking mushroom, tells us that. She says, I fear for Artorias because he has nary a bit of dark within him. So she basically says he is a being of light. But we know that Artorias came into a covenant with Kath, or a covenant with someone, most likely Kath, became a dark wraith and was allowed to cross the abyss in order to try to take battle the four kings. So when that happened, his divinity was nullified. He gave up his divinity. He gave up being a being of light, and he became a being of the dark. And this is reflected by the fact that there are two versions of the Artorias Greatsword. There is the normal version of the sword, which does physical damage and which does magical damage. And then there is the cursed version of the sword. And the cursed version of the sword does physical damage only. So the magical portion, or the divine portion of his sword, was nullified, was taken away when he gave up his allegiance to the gods, to Lord Wynn, and instead pledged his allegiance to Kath and to serving the dark by collecting humanity, if he indeed became a dark wraith. Alright, so just remember that, guys, and we will talk more about Artorias as we progress through the DLC in the next couple of videos. Alright, so let me talk a little bit about this area. We are in Oolacile Township, and if you look at the bricks, if you look at the color palettes, this area looks very similar to the ruins in Darkroot Basin and Darkroot Garden. So it appears that Oolacile, present day Oolacile, was actually where in our time we saw Darkroot Basin and Darkroot Garden, and we saw the ruins of this once magical land. Alright, and as we're walking through the township, we are invaded by Marvelous Chester, and he is holding a crossbow, and he is also using daggers. And if you guys, and he doesn't have a shield. And if you guys remember, the people from Karim are notorious for using sneaky tactics and for not using shields. So it's possible that Marvelous Chester is from Karim. It's also very likely that he is a Dark Wraith himself, because he is able... Well, first of all, he is in Oolacile, so he's kind of close to the Abyss. But second of all, he is able to invade us. So we are going to have words with Marvelous Chester and try to find out a little bit more about who he is. And one thing to remember, guys, is that in our time, when we were going through New Londo, we found some implements, we found some items that were from Karim, that were made by Arstor, the Earl of Karim, and the most prominent of which was the Cursebite ring, which we found in the ruins, and we used that ring in the fight against Seath to make sure that we didn't get cursed. Alright, so I haven't talked about the enemies in Oolacile, in the downloadable content, and we come across a couple of different kinds of enemies. They're both called bloated head enemies. One is a regular bloated head, and then the other one is a bloated head sorcerer. And you can actually get the bloated head as a drop from these enemies, from both the normal enemies that attack you with their long arms, and it's a rare drop that you can get the bloated head of the sorcerers. Alright, and my weapon is at risk here, so I'm going to have to stop, and I'm going to have to go repair my weapon here, so I will be right back. Alright guys, so we are back with a fully repaired weapon, and what I did is I ran all the way back to the bonfire, and then I came back, and I didn't know if I was going to get the drop, so I started talking about the bloated head of the enemies that we find in Oolacile. But we did get the drop, so we can read the description. And the description of the bloated head tells us a lot of things. It tells us that, yes, indeed, these enemies that have mutated are Oolacile residents. So the entire town of Oolacile has been transformed into these crazed zombie-like enemies with the long arms by the Dark of Manus, the father of the abyss. The other thing that the description tells us is that the transformation or the mutation is very nasty. The head is cracked. There are fissures. It's also filled with a bunch of eyes, and it has mucus inside of it. So obviously, whoever has that head, whoever has mutated and their head has been transformed into a bloated head, they have been completely turned into zombies, and they're obviously crazy. Now, the bloated sorcerer head, the head of the sorcerers, that is a drop as well, and but that is a very, very rare drop. But you will find when you read the description that indeed the only difference in the description between a regular head, bloated head, and the head of a sorcerer is the description will tell you that the bloated head of the sorcerer has some faint magic left in it, or some magical residue. So it tells you that the person that was transformed by the dark that is coming from Manus, father of the abyss, was a sorcerer. So one of the normal residents of Oolacile have been turned into these enemies, and the magicians, the sorcerers of Oolacile, people like Dusk, have been transformed into those sorcerers that use a long white catalyst that is very different from the catalyst that the Dusk of Oolacile uses, and that they use that catalyst, and they also can cast different sorceries that we haven't seen before, and all of those sorceries are dark. We've seen the sorcerers kind of throw projectiles at us, and those projectiles are dark, so they are a result of the abyss. They are a result of being tainted by the abyss, and they're also heavy. They will also, you need to have a stable shield. If not, they can literally knock your shield back. All right, so you saw that rope that was already cut, but sometimes the sorcerer will cut the rope for you when she does one of the attacks. And other times you have to cut the rope yourself, but a treasure will be dropped, and we will pick it up here in a little bit. And there are a couple of places in the downloadable content where using a light source, either using the skull lantern or using a maggot on your head, or casting light like I just did, will open up a couple of different areas, some secret passages to go through. Now, I'm looking in the wrong place because I forgot where I was looking, so I apologize, guys. That's why I'm kind of walking around. So let me continue to talk about what appears to be happening in Oolacile. So for some reason, there has been an outbreak of the abyss in Oolacile. We don't know what happened, but we will find out as we go through this walkthrough. And by the way, here is some secret or obscure loot. There is some humanity, actually some twin humanities here. And now we know what happened to the Oolacile in the future. Now we know why there are ruins, and the city was completely destroyed, or the land was completely destroyed. What happened is that the inhabitants were tainted by the dark that is emanating from Manus, the father of the abyss, and that is not only affecting the enemies, but is also the people here, but it is also affecting the land. You could see that everything is kind of turning black, or getting this dark tinge to it. Alright, so we picked up the treasure that I was telling you guys about, and we saw the description. It's called Dark Fog, and the description tells us that indeed it is a sorcery that was born from the dark, because it was made by a sorcerer that was tainted by the dark, but before he went completely crazy. He or she went completely crazy. So that sorcerer created that projectile sorcery. And like I said, and this is typical of the sorceries of Oolacile. They are weighty. They actually, unlike the sorceries of our time, the sorceries of Oolacile have momentum to them. So and the game explains to us that it's actually the humanity that is used to make that sorcery, or that is contained in that sorcery that makes it have weight, that makes it have momentum, so that when the sorcery hits us, not only does it damage us, but it also knocks us back, and it takes a lot of endurance and stamina from us and from our shield. Alright, so you saw me get that Titanite chunk by opening up that secret area with the light source. So I was finally able to go to the right location, and we have cleared the first part of Oolacile Township, and we now are going to go ahead and trip the shortcut. Now, one thing I should say, guys, that one spell that you may want to try that I did not, but is very, very useful in this area, is Hidden Body. Okay, so like I said, Hidden Body is very, very useful in this area, and I would use it quite a bit more than I am using it here. I only used it one time, this time here, for this approach. That way I don't aggro and pull all the enemies. But there were other situations on the approach as we went down the city to this hall, or to this cathedral, where Hidden Body would be useful, especially when you are having to fight the sorcerers. So if you want to sneak behind the sorcerers, because they really pack a punch, Hidden Body is excellent, or you can also use the Fog Ring. Alright, so you can tell that the sorcerers also have another spell or sorcery. They can poison us, some kind of a poison fog. So that is a sort of a new spell. We already know that they have the Dark Orb spell, which we were able to pick up just a little bit ago. And as you can tell, it hurts quite a bit when they hit you. So like I said, Hidden Body, I probably should have used it here, or the Ring of Fog. If you're having problems with this area, the Ring of Fog will help you quite a bit. Alright, so we've cleared him, and we see an enemy a little bit further ahead. Alright, so let's see if we can get a better look at this enemy using the binoculars. And he appears to be a deformed hunchback, and he has got a post that is tied to him. And he is actually called the Chained Prisoner. But first, let's talk about the fight area. So we are in this great hall, and the hall is surrounded by statues of Oolacile sorcerers. We know that they're sorcerers because they're carrying the Oolacile catalyst. But none of these statues have heads. So that is related to the fact that all of the Oolacile sorcerers have been tainted by the Abyss, except for Dusk. And the Abyss turns their head into bloated heads, and that is probably why the statues are missing the heads, or it's related to that. Alright, so the chained prisoner dropped the chain armor, and the only way that I can explain that in a lore-friendly manner is that there was a warrior that was wearing the chain set, and he was in prison, and he was being watched over by the Oolacile sorcerers, and when he was tainted to the abyss, he became, you know, that deformed hunchback beast, the chained prisoner, and that is how we end up with the chain armor. Alright, so we found a bonfire, and we also see that the deeper and the lower we go, the darker it gets. So we are getting closer to Manus, we are getting closer to the abyss. And you can also see that this area is tainted more because there's more of that black, bluish, brackish hue on the ground. But if you remember, back up in the higher levels, and we are warping back up to the bonfire in Oolacile Township, you could see that the ground is cleaner here. So there is a taint, but it's not as much as when you get further down. And this makes sense because at the beginning of the episode, when we talked to Elizabeth, she told us that our progenitor, Manus, the dark beast, is the father of the abyss. So the abyss is emanating or coming from him and is seeping out. And as it's doing so, is turning the sorcerers and the residents of Oolacile into bloated heads and bloated head sorcerers. And it is also changing the ground, and it's changing the environment. So it's changing everything. So again, this is similar to what happened in Blighttown, and also what happened to Seath. We see again an uncontrollable power that is affecting everything about it. So some personality, someone is unable to control this immense power, and this power is seeping out and is just affecting everything. In Blighttown, it was the failed chaos flame, or the failed imitation to the initial or first flame that became the chaos flame and began turning the creatures of Blighttown into chaos demons. In the Duke's archives, it was the power that Seath found in the tomes of the archives that was crystallizing everything. And here we see just an immense power, and that is the power of the abyss, the power of Manus, the power of the dark that is consuming everything. Alright, so that is going to do it for this episode, guys. There's actually going to be 3 episodes that'll cover the DLC, so this is the first one, so there's 2 more coming up. And we'll pick it up right here in the next episode. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit, and I am going to go to an area that's maybe a little bit more familiar. It's easier to spot, and that's where we will start in the next video. This is the Tech Phantom signing off.